Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, all. Today is August 18th, 2024, and our conversation this morning is how do you make a difference? And we gave it that title because uh, there is a World Humanitarian Day tomorrow, August 19th. Has been since, well, I guess I have to read it. On August 19th, each year, we celebrate World Humanitarian Day, the purpose of which is to raise awareness of the plight of civilians around the world who've become caught up in conflicts, and also to honor and raise support for the humanitarian workers who risk and sometimes lose their lives to help. And so this is a day that has been uh, um, a national day since 2008 by the United Nations. And of course, with the conflicts going on around the world, certainly in Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Palestine,
To name only a few.
yeah, there are always lots more.
Somalia, and there's just so many places right now. I heard recently, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it was a couple of million people who were either in a horrible situation with hunger or in combat areas or disease.
Natural disasters.
Yeah, so there's always lots and lots of human beings who are in very difficult situations and require as much help as is possible to be given.
Right. And what we've been seeing more recently that I don't think was common before, it's always happened, of course, and that is targeting the humanitarian helpers, targeting the very people trying to bring food and assistance to the people being bombed and destroyed. So that's sort of a new thing. And but all of us cannot be humanitarian workers in conflict zones, but all of us can do something. And I do believe with this group, all of us are doing something to make a difference in the world. And so that's what we wanted to talk about. The scripture says that faith without works is dead. And in other words, to believe in God, to believe in good, to believe that you're a part of all that good, and to do nothing would be dead. That your faith is dead. But I don't know anybody who does that. Most people I know of faith, meaning a faith in God, a faith in good. I'm not defining how you view God. We view it as a creative energy, a soul, one soul that is the soul of all of us. But however you view God, that you are doing something in regard to assisting others where you can. And that is because we know that the other is also part of us. We're all the creations of the one God or the one soul, whatever you want to call it. So the other is not really other to me, it is one with me. And to the extent that I can, love them, honor them, help them, and to the extent that we can is an important point. And Bob's going to talk more about that. Because we have learned as psychotherapists that you can't help everybody, even when you would like to.
I'm going to take me back to when I was in the Army during the Vietnam era. And I wasn't delighted to have to do any of that, but what was interesting was what I was hired to do by the military, of course, was to treat people as a medic. That was the job description. And as a humanitarian, what I wanted to do was to treat people. Now, the fact that my heart was in it, that I had some experience, that I wanted to do something that would make a difference was only part of the equation. And that's what's really very important. I spent 8 months getting trained to have the skills that were required to be able to perform the service that would make a difference. I think sometimes we get involved in things without any skill sets having been developed, without having paid attention to our own abilities and our own limits. And we say yes to things that are way beyond what we can do, believing it because our heart is in it or because we're enthusiastic or because we care, that by itself will make a difference. And I think what I wanted to talk about today in particular was how do you take care of you that you could be in service to others? How do you treat yourself so that the result of your having treated yourself well shows up in the work that you do? We watched recently a program on tennis pros, a movie on tennis pros or a documentary. It was really interesting because the tennis pros that they were highlighting were tennis pros in the 90s. And what they did is they picked up a racket and they practiced and they played, and that was how you did the game. And what they discovered, they said, is a new generation of players. And that new generation of players had physical exercise, massages, all kinds of things, acupuncture, meditation, yoga. They were doing a dozen things to prepare themselves for a game that no one had ever played like they were going to play. And so what's really important as we think about giving ourselves to service is how have we taken care of the self that we're giving to service? How have we treated that self? Because it's easy to get exhausted. It's also easy to give yourself to a situation thinking that you can make a difference multiple times to conclude that your service isn't any good or doesn't work. And so you want to step carefully, you want to step thoughtfully. Short story, true story. A woman had a child who was just so hyperactive, and her hyperactivity was such a problem. So she sent her daughter to a variety of different therapists. Every therapist that she sent her daughter to gave suggestions from medication to this behavior or that behavior to try to curtail or control this child's behavior. Finally, she sent her daughter to an analyst who had a different approach. And what the analyst did is he sat back and just watched her. He watched her for a very long time as she danced around the room, moved around the room. There was music in the background. She moved to the music. She just couldn't stay still. He never said a word to her. Had her sit down as much as she could, got mother in, and mother said, "What should I do?" And he said, "Enroll her in ballet school." And she became a well-known, successful ballerina. But what he did was he didn't jump in before he knew what he could do or before he knew what was going to be useful or how he could use himself. He stood back and said, "What is it that I have to offer this situation that might be useful?" Often we offer ourselves not necessarily to make a difference, even though that's the split stated reason. We offer ourselves because we want to feel good. We offer ourselves because we want someone to tell us we did a good job. And service can include that. But first off, you have to be strong enough, you have to be determined enough, you have to be skilled enough to be able to do the thing you want to do. And the joy that comes from having mastered a particular skill that you can give to your community or you can give to an individual is huge. And so what I really wanted to emphasize is today, when we're looking at how can we serve the community, we need to be in service to our own well-being. If you've eaten well, you slept well, you're in relationships that support you, you feel empowered and balanced, you're already in a much better position than many of the people you're going to serve. Now, what are the skills that could make a difference? If people come to you and ask for money and you have money, is the best thing for you to do to give them money? And do you have an unlimited supply of it? And if you don't, how could you invest your money in a way that would allow you to give something that would help them have money rather than have your money? And so the easy thing to do is to give handouts until you have nothing or you're in a situation that isn't much better than the person to whom you've handed your good. If you can empower other people the way you empowered yourself, you become a demonstration of the good that you want to give.
Mhm. Exactly. And we spoke about some of our failures to help some people because as therapists with our own private practice, we just wanted to, to help everybody. And it just doesn't work out particularly interestingly. And I was taught this by my mentors, but the people who are most likely to turn on you are the people that you treat for free. You wouldn't think it's possible, but it happened to me two times.
Mhm.
The people that I felt the most sympathy for really and wanted to help and treated them for free ended up blaming me for some of their problems. And it's such a shock and it so hurts. But we need to listen to our mentors who've been there before us.
Well, and it's a very important piece of this. It's an old saying I've heard before. If the person doesn't have any skin in the game, then they can play a different game. If they've got an investment in the game, there are a lot of centers right now that I know of because I work in mental health and I refer people to them that require that you put in a certain amount of service time in the organization that is giving you a place to stay and food to eat. And what happens eventually is the people who are willing to give back or have the capacity to participate, they fulfill what the program requires and they become fulfilled. The people that are looking for a free handout get mad when the free handout includes any responsibility at all. And part of personal growth is self-responsibility. But the first self-responsibility is to you and how you treat your soul and your wholeness and your well-being so that you are available for the work that you want to do.
Yes, that's really the key of what we're talking about today here with how do you make a difference? You need to start by making a difference with yourself.
Be the example of the thing you want to see.
Yes. And I also wanted to talk about how you don't have to be a trained therapist or even a trained practitioner or minister to help people.
You're kidding.
My parents were not trained in any way. As a matter of fact, my father kind of looked down to at people who were do-gooders in the community. He wasn't social that way. He was just a very hard worker. He worked very hard for his family, but probably nobody in town offered more people a place to stay when their house flooded. And we had people living with us all the time. When their house flooded, they were invited to our house to stay, invited his brothers to live there when they went to college. My mother never had much say in this, but he was always helping people all the time wherever he could. And so you don't have to be an official designee helper to do that. And my mother was a friend, a really good friend to so many people. And so each gives in their own way, as long as we realize that the other is us, that we are all one, and we help where we can, whether it's with kindness or assistance or whatever we may share. Because sometimes, no matter how much knowledge you have, your sharing of that knowledge is not welcome unless it's invited. So as long as we know that we're all one, and some people will view you as the enemy, and you have to let that be okay and just let them go their way and continue doing what you can. Excuse me.
Over the years, I've taken care of a lot of wild animals that were injured. And the first thing I noticed when I was trying to help an injured animal is his natural response was to bite. And bite because when they're injured, they feel vulnerable. And when they feel vulnerable, they don't want to have any more injury. And that's also true with people. People will often respond negatively to you, not because they want to be negative, but because they don't want any more hurt. And that's an important thing to pay attention to. The question that I ask myself as a service provider is, anything that I do with anyone, would I be willing to do this every day? And there are things that I'm willing to do, but when I realize I can't do this again tomorrow, I can't do this for a week, maybe I need to pace myself or ask myself, is this something I really need to do? The problem with doing extraordinary things is the people who often are in extraordinary need expect the extraordinary on a daily basis, and they need it. And so then that might mean you need a team. It might mean you need to take a step back and say, what part of this can I manage? And where I'm going with this is, I would like all of us to be good service providers, not burned out service providers, not burned out because we tried giving away money or we tried giving away a place to stay 3 or 4 or 5 times and it didn't work. We didn't realize we were making the same mistakes in the process of doing that. And then we say, I can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. Actually, it might be able to work if you were to take a look at, what was my part in this? What did I expect out of this? How could I pace myself so that it doesn't happen again?
I'm thinking a lot about my father today because today was his birthday. And I'm remembering a time when I was about 25 years old. I had a son, and he was back from Argentina. He worked there. And we went to a department store for clothes, and they always bought clothes when they were back in the States. And we were he asked a salesman if he had any larger size suits. And my father was 6'2" and a big man. And he looked at him, and he was not fat, he was big, sort of Perry Mason like, you know. And the salesman looked at him and said, "You have to go to a tall and fat man store for that." I was so shocked that he would say that to my father. We turned around, and my father said, "Oh, honey, you know, how would you feel if this were your job and you had to be a salesman in a department store?" In other words, he just thought, you know, he's grumpy because of his situation. Doesn't have anything to do with me. So I love those little lessons that we get from
Yeah.
our parents, and we can think back
It's a,
many years later.
it's a beautiful illustration, and so many of the things that offend us were really self-protective mechanisms that weren't designed to offend us. We're just offended because sometimes we're actually looking forward and waiting for the offense. And without realizing we can have a different mind for those conditions. But it's easy to respond that way, obviously.
Yeah. So the question to ask yourself what
We're good.
is, how are you taking care of yourself?
To make a difference. Another example that I love is if you're gonna play chess, when you play chess with your partner, what you're doing is you're inviting somebody to be a participant in something that's really a lot of fun. And you're saying, be an equal partner with me. But the first thing you gotta learn is how to play chess. I know people that invite somebody to sit down and play chess because it would really be good for them, but they've never learned the game themselves. And so each move is important. You know, as a therapist, my job is to help play chess in a way that the person that I'm playing with wins, and to make them a winner in every situation. And that doesn't mean that you lose. It means that you're strategic enough in what you do that you figure out how to help them win. If you don't have the skills that you need, borrow them, refer them, ask for help, go with that person to some place where they can get the help that they need. And then you have become such a helper. And so what I'm asking all of us to do, myself included, is to pay more attention to, is what I'm doing making a difference, or is it taking away from me and taking away from the person because I can't follow through? I'm not that good at it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it because it feels right.
And sometimes you have to be selective, or just like the animals that Bob would rescue, and some of them would bite him, you know. So if you're trying to help someone and they bite you, you know, you've got a wild animal there that you can't help. So you
Yeah.
need to back off and
So
protect
whenever you
yourself.
go to somebody who's upset, wear gloves,
Wear gloves.
your hazmat suit,
That's
you know,
good.
your Velcro and all. No, why are you worried? Yeah, you know, because we're always at risk, and what we want to be able to do, you know, in service to our planet and in service to our family and in service to our loved ones, is to be consistent and sustainable. And, you know, if we can't be sustainable in what we do, what will be the cost? What's the cost when we say yes to something and about halfway through it say, you know, I'm way in over my head, I can't do this. And so pace yourself. Ask yourself, what could I do here that would make a difference? And how would I feel if it didn't work? And if it doesn't work, maybe this is something that I should prepare better for, or have a partner in. Who can you count on if it doesn't go well to support you?
And when I was studying the Course in Miracles, I remember one thing that showed up, and I don't remember the exact words, but it was talking about this business that they were all here for each other. And it said, don't be concerned about who you should be assisting or helping. They will show up.
Yeah.
They will show up to you, and then that's how you know who you should.
Well, and also who will show up often is the person that will show you what it is you don't know that you need to learn. That
That's
doesn't
true
mean, that
too.
doesn't mean you jump in and do something. It means, wow, that's interesting. This is the third person this month that said, would you do this for me? And I realized I would like to be able to, but I actually don't have the skills. Maybe I need to acquire them. You know, one of the things that the athletes do, I noticed at the Olympics, and it's on my mind because it was such an extraordinary thing to see. After the Olympic, after they ran their courses, swam their laps, or jumped their height, immediately they were embraced by a coach. Immediately they were supported, encouraged, and empowered to do more and do better.
Whether they did well or
It
poorly.
made no difference. if you don't have somebody after you make that high jump that you can go to that will support you, maybe it would be a good idea to see if you can get that support, find that coach, so that then you can jump higher and jump more easily. And when you fall, you'll fall softer.
So we know that each of us makes a difference in our own way. And we know each of you is making a difference in your own way. So we support you. We thank you. And do you want to end with prayer?
Well, I want to go just a little bit further. There's
Okay.
one other thing that I discovered, which is really very interesting. We watched a special on dogs, and the special on dogs, the documentary on dogs, was really interesting. One of the things they discovered was the puppies who were not as taken care of by their mothers, uh, who were more left alone to explore and solve problems, actually became better service dogs and were better problem solvers than the ones who had mothers who took care of them. I mean, so completely that they wouldn't let them out of the sight, that we now call in human terms helicopter moms and dads. But that was an interesting thing for me. So there's a wonderful space between helping and helping too much, or stepping in beyond what's reasonable, sustainable, and doesn't allow the person to take responsibility. And so on the one hand, the puppies looked somewhat abandoned. On the other hand, they were the ones who thrived. And so I don't know what kind of a puppy you are, but you get to thrive if you choose it. Yeah, let's end with a treatment and realizing. So I'll begin with, first off, let's know together that God in us, as us, is working through us directly and completely all of the time. The God that we call divine intelligence, that we call super consciousness, that we call spirit, it doesn't take breaks. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't go on some of the time. It is not on vacation. It is continuously with us all of the time, working through us in every breath we take, with every cell of our body. We are an organized phenomena of good. We are the possibility for the revealing of truth in every situation. Who we are is nothing less than extraordinary. And we are here now to demonstrate that extraordinary quality that we have in this life experience.
And that was so beautiful. I only want to say, and so it is.
And so it is.
Well done. Well done. So
We're going to go to another very, very important part. And I want to thank all of you too, for those of you that contribute on a regular basis. It's easy every week to say, hey, can you give us a little bit of money to help us do a little bit more? And it is important, but really what's important is your contribution has changed people's lives in ways that you maybe never could have imagined. Now, I do a lot of work, and Judith does a lot of work, and with people who don't attend and can't afford to attend and can't afford the work we do. We are encouraged and empowered by you. And that is so, so helpful. So thank you for your support. If you want to support us as much as you are or more, Judith's going to tell you just how to do that. Every time I feel like we're on PBS.
So this is the first page of our website, which is cslpalmbeaches.org. And in it, there's a button at the top that I don't see right now. Why don't I see it?
Scroll down.
Here it is, ways to donate. Ways to donate. And you click on that and it'll show you ways to donate. And we appreciate your gifts. So we also like to say an affirmation, because we know what we affirm is what happens for us. So let's affirm right now that my investment today is made with a full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. Just like the Bible says. The Bible says that, and it also says flowing over. And the reason, well, flowing over, money can flow over too. But the reason that said that is that people, the communities used to give 10% of their grain to the temple. And then people who needed food would go and they would lift their robes up and they would pour grain into them. And so that's why it often says flowing over, enriched and multiplied, flowing over. Okay.
Stop sharing. There we go. Now what we're going to do is end the recording.